You think I don't know what you've been doing? Every move, every phone call. I built this empire watching people, and you think I missed you. Everything you have in G, I gave you. You want to walk away from that?
No. I want you to watch me take it. You didn't build anything. You just made sure I had nowhere else to go.
She was dying. Not the slow, cinematic kind of dying that people imagined when they picture their own end. Not peaceful. Not dignified. This was the body fighting itself, the chest caving inward like something vital had been ripped from the center of it, the floor rushing up cold and marble hard, the phone screen cracked and glowing 2 feet away with a name on it she'd called 3 times. Victor. The rain came down in sheets against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Romano penthouse, 40 stories above a city that kept moving, kept living, didn't know and didn't care that Elena Romano was folding to the kitchen floor with her left arm burning like someone had poured acid through the vein. She reached for the phone. She couldn't reach the phone. Victor. The last thing she saw before the darkness swallowed her was her own face in the rain-streaked glass. Pale. Alone. And beyond it, the indifferent glitter of 10 million city lights that had never once looked back. Across town, in the Riverside Hotel's presidential suite, Victor Romano was tracing a lazy pattern down Selena Vale's bare spine. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. 3rd time in 10 minutes. He glanced at the screen. Elena. His jaw tightened. He silenced it and set it back down. Ignore it, Selena murmured against his shoulder, those green eyes finding his in the low hotel light. She had the kind of face that made men stupid. He knew that, and he'd chosen it anyway. 6 months of choosing it. You're with me. I am, Victor said, though something moved in his gut. Something he didn't examine too closely. Elena never called 3 times. Selena sat up, the silk sheet pooling at her waist, and she said the words she'd been sharpening for weeks. When are you going to tell her, Victor? That you're leaving her? That you're choosing me? There was something beneath the desire in her voice. Something harder. Something that had been building for months into a demand he couldn't keep ignoring. It's complicated. It's really not. Her eyes held his. Either you want to be with me, or you don't. Either you're leaving her, or you're not. His phone buzzed again. Not Elena this time. The doorman. Victor answered. Mr. Romano. The man's voice was stripped clean of its usual deference. Sir. It's your wife. The paramedics just took her. She collapsed. They said it's her heart. St. Mary's. You need to come now. The phone nearly left his hand. He was already moving, grabbing clothes off the floor, his hands shaking in a way they never shook, not in boardrooms, not in back rooms where men bled. Victor. Selena's voice cut across the room. Sharp now. Stripped of its performance. What's wrong? It's Elena. Her heart. So go. She pulled the sheet up, and there was something in her tone that Victor almost heard, but didn't. Something that sounded, just barely, like satisfaction. Go play the devoted husband. He looked at her, really looked, and saw it. He left without another word. Before this story goes any further, if you've ever loved someone who made you feel invisible, if you've ever given everything to a person who gave you almost nothing back, stay right here. Because Elena's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about what happens when the woman everyone underestimated decides she's done being underestimated. Like this video. Subscribe. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Elena's story reaches. Victor made the 20-minute drive in 12. Red lights, rain-slicked streets, the Mercedes cutting through the city like a blade, and the whole time one thought hammering against the inside of his skull. Please let her be alive. Please let her be alive. It surprised him how much he meant it. He'd built his empire on cold calculation. He'd ordered men hurt with less feeling than he showed choosing wine. But the thought of losing Elena, quiet, gentle Elena who'd never once asked him for more than he was willing to give, filled him with a terror that was entirely new and entirely unwelcome. St. Mary's emergency room was controlled chaos when he arrived. He grabbed the first person in scrubs. Elena Romano. My wife. She came in by ambulance. Room 7, the nurse said. already pulling away. They're still working on her. Victor ran. The corridor stretched like something from a nightmare. When he reached room 7 and stopped in the doorway, his breath left him all at once. She looked like she was already gone. Pale against the white sheets, wires trailing from her chest to machines that beeped with terrible steadiness. And 4 in her arm. The doctor and 2 nurses moving around her with the efficient urgency of people who knew time was the variable they couldn't control.
BP stabilizing.
Heart rate's coming up. She's responding. Victor's knees almost went. An older doctor materialized at his elbow.
Wiry med glasses.
Kind eyes that didn't soften what she had to say.
I'm Dr. Armani.
Your wife experienced a cardiac episode. We've stabilized her, but she's not out of danger yet. What happened? She's 32. She's healthy. Stress-induced cardiomyopathy. Dr. Armani's voice was careful, precise. Also called broken heart syndrome. It mimics a heart attack, but it's triggered by severe emotional or physical stress. The heart muscle temporarily weakens. If she hadn't gotten here when she did. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Broken heart syndrome. Victor moved to Elena's bedside like a man wading through water. She looked impossibly small. Her dark hair spread across the pillow, her lips slightly parted, her chest rising and falling in shallow waves. He took her hand. So cold. I'm sorry, he whispered, even though she couldn't hear him.
Elena.
I'm so sorry. He didn't know precisely what he was apologizing for. That was perhaps the most damning thing of all. 2 hours passed. Victor sat in the plastic chair beside her bed and held her hand and watched the machines measure her life in peaks and valleys. The rain stopped. Dawn came in gray through the window. When Elena's eyes finally opened, she looked at him for a long moment. Victor had faced men who wanted him dead and held their gaze without flinching. But the look in his wife's eyes in that gray dawn, not anger, not hurt, but the complete absence of expectation, was the most frightening thing he'd ever seen. You didn't come, she whispered. 3 words. I'm here now, Victor said. I called you. Her voice was barely there. 3 times. I was dying, Victor. And I called you 3 times. I know, and I was with her. She said it flatly. Not a question. Not an accusation. Just a fact, delivered like she was reading from a document. I understand now.
Elena.
You were scared, she said. A pause. I was dying. There's a difference. The machines beeped their steady rhythm into the silence. Victor wanted to argue. He wanted to explain. He wanted to reach across the space between them and close it by sheer force of will, the way he closed every other gap that inconvenienced him.
But he didn't know how.
For the first time in his adult life, the man who controlled half the city's underground had nothing to say. I'm tired, Elena said. Please go. I'm not leaving you. Then stay. She turned her face toward the window. But don't talk. I can't listen to you right now. So Victor stayed. And he was silent. And he watched his wife's profile in the growing light, and somewhere in that watching, understood that something had broken that no apology could fix. What he didn't see was the woman standing in the corridor outside, partially hidden behind a vending machine. Selena Vale had followed him. She stood in the hallway and watched through the narrow window in the door as Victor pressed his forehead against Elena's palm, his shoulders shaking. She watched a man she'd thought she owned perform a tenderness she'd never once received from him. Her hands curled into fists. 6 months. She'd invested 6 months. Positioned herself inside his operation, cultivated his trust, made herself indispensable in ways his wife had never managed. And still he looked at Elena like that. A nurse passed. Selena smoothed her expression into something soft and concerned.
Excuse me, Elena Romano.
Is she going to be okay? Are you family? A friend. I just heard and came straight over. She's stable. Lucky though. Another hour and the nurse shook her head. She'll need to avoid stress for the next few months. Anything that puts strain on her heart could trigger another episode. Of course, Selena said warmly. Thank you. The nurse walked away. Selena stood alone, and a slow smile curved her lips. Avoid stress. She pulled out her phone and typed a single text. She's going to be fine. See you tomorrow night. In Elena's room, Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, saw Selena's name, and immediately turned it face down. But Elena had already seen it. When her eyes met Victor's again, they were empty in a way that made the cardiac monitor seem almost irrelevant. I think I'd like to rest now, she said. Alone. Victor left the hospital feeling like a man who'd accidentally lit a fuse, but couldn't find the bomb. He nearly walked straight into Selena in the corridor. What are you doing here? His voice dropped to the register he used for people who'd disappointed him. I was worried about you. You need to leave. Now, Selena. The word came out like a warning. This isn't the place. Her jaw tightened.
Fine.
But we need to talk soon. Later. He walked away before she could respond. He didn't see the look she turned toward Elena's closed door, the sharp calculation, the cold twist of her mouth, the assessment of an opponent who'd just been revealed as more substantial than expected. 3 days later, Elena was released from the hospital. Victor brought her home to the penthouse in the middle of the afternoon, fussing over her like she was spun glass. He'd cleared his schedule for 2 weeks, he announced. He'd be home for every meal. They'd take that trip to Italy as soon as the doctors cleared her. The Amalfi Coast, the one she'd mentioned on their honeymoon 7 years ago when they couldn't afford it. Whatever you need, he said. I'm here. Elena looked at him with those calm, empty eyes and said, That's not necessary. Yes, it is.
No, Victor.
She smoothed the cashmere blanket he'd draped over her legs. There's nothing to say. You were busy when I called. It happens. The casual dismissal gutted him more than any accusation would have. He sat beside her, searching her face for something to fight against, something to apologize into, some crack in the stillness he could press his fingers into and pry open.
He found nothing.
I want to give you everything, he tried. I know I haven't been the husband you deserve. I know I've been distracted. But I'm here now. That sounds nice, Elena said softly. When I'm better. She closed her eyes. Victor sat there another moment, then went to his study. What he didn't see was Elena's eyes opening the moment he left the room. The stillness fell away like a mask. She pulled her phone from her robe pocket, a new one Victor had bought her, the cracked one still on the kitchen floor somewhere, and opened a private browser. Private Investigator NYC. Discreet. High net worth clients. She found Barrett and Associates within minutes. Professional website, no flashy promises, the kind of understated confidence that suggested people paid them very well to solve problems very quietly. She sent an email from a new account. I need evidence of an affair. Money is no concern. Discretion is everything. The reply came back in under an hour. We can meet tomorrow. 2 p.m.
Come alone.
Elena deleted the thread, closed the browser, picked up the television remote, and turned on a cooking show. When Victor checked on her 20 minutes later, she appeared to be dozing peacefully. He had no idea his wife had just declared war. That evening, while Elena slept, or performed sleeping, which had become almost the same thing, Victor stepped onto the penthouse balcony and answered the call from Selena he'd been avoiding. It's been 3 days, Selena said without preamble. Are we really going to pretend nothing happened? My wife almost died. His voice was low, edged. Yes, I'm aware. I was at the hospital, remember? A pause calibrated for maximum impact. Now the question is, how long are you going to use that as an excuse? An excuse. He gripped the railing. She had a cardiac episode. But she didn't die, Victor. So now what? You play nursemaid until it's convenient for you again, and I'm supposed to wait in the wings? That's not. Tell me when, Selena said, her voice dropping into something colder and more dangerous than anger. When exactly were you planning to leave her? Or were you always going to string us both along? It's complicated. It's really not. Silence. And then, remember something. I know things about your business that Elena never will. I have access to accounts, to arrangements, to information that would be unfortunate if it came to light. I've been very helpful to you these past 6 months. I'd hate for that to change. The temperature on the balcony seemed to drop 10 degrees. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you of reality. Her voice was almost sweet now. We're partners, Victor. In more ways than one. Don't forget that. She hung up. Victor stood on the balcony with the dead phone against his ear, recalibrating everything he thought he knew about Selena Vale. The shipping routes she'd suggested. The customs contacts she'd provided. The cash accounts she'd helped him structure. He'd been too distracted by her to notice how much access she'd accumulated. He'd let his guard down with a woman who might be a weapon pointed directly at him. Inside, through the glass, Elena lay still on the sofa. But Elena's eyes were open. She watched his reflection in the window, the rigidity of his shoulders, the death grip on the railing. She couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. She closed her eyes and let the corners of her lips rise, just slightly. Let them think she was the fragile one. Let them think she was breaking. They had no idea what was actually breaking was their world. And she was the one holding the hammer. The office of Barrett and Associates sat on the 14th floor of a building so deliberately unremarkable that you could walk past it 100 times without seeing it, which was precisely the point. Elena arrived at 1:55 in a simple black dress and oversized sunglasses. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and the expression of someone who'd heard everything and been surprised by none of it, barely glanced up. Name? Mrs. Armani. Elena used the doctor's name. It felt appropriate. Third door on the left. James Barrett was younger than she'd expected. Maybe 40, sharp-eyed, with a kind of neat economy of movement that suggested military background. His office contained nothing personal except a single photograph of a young girl on his desk. He didn't rise when Elena entered. Mrs. Armani, please sit. Elena sat and kept her sunglasses on. Barrett studied her for a moment, then nodded as if something had confirmed itself. My retainer is $50,000.
Non refundable.
That buys you 1 month of surveillance, full reporting, photographic and video evidence if it exists, and complete discretion. Elena opened her purse, a Hermes bag Victor had given her for their 5th anniversary, and placed a plain white envelope on the desk. Barrett opened it, counted, nodded. Tell me what you need. My husband is having an affair. The words came easier than she'd expected, maybe because saying them out loud made them real. And real meant actionable. I need to know everything. Where they meet, how often, what they discuss. If there are others. Full documentation. Does he know you suspect?
No.
Elena allowed the smallest smile. He thinks I'm too fragile to notice. Something moved behind Barrett's eyes. Recognition, possibly. Or respect. I'll need his name. Usual locations. Any details about the woman. Elena gave him everything she knew. Victor's office.
His gym.
The restaurants where he conducted business over rare steaks and unremarkable conversation. The fact that his mistress had green eyes and a slight accent and had sent a text message to a man's phone while his wife lay sedated in a hospital bed. Her name is Selena. Elena finished. I don't know her last name yet, but she's connected to his business. She knows things she shouldn't. Barrett's pen paused. What kind of business? The kind where you don't ask questions if you want to stay healthy. Elena held his gaze. Is that a problem? It doubles my rate. Elena opened her purse again. Second envelope. Another $50,000 in clean bills. Barrett's eyebrow rose a single, controlled fraction. You came prepared. I came serious, Mr. Barrett. My husband built his empire on secrets. I need you to find every single one. Barrett stood and extended his hand. I'll have a preliminary report in 1 week. Encrypted communication only. Memorize the address on this card, then destroy it. Elena took the card, looked at it once, slipped it into her coat pocket. One more thing, she said at the door. This meeting never happened. Mrs. Armani. The ghost of a smile. I don't know what you're talking about. The days that followed settled into performance. Victor played the attentive husband with the focused desperation of someone who believed contrition looked like presence. He brought Elena breakfast in bed. He sat with her in the afternoons. He canceled things he shouldn't have canceled and rearranged his carefully constructed life around her recovery. Elena played the grateful convalescent. She took her medications on schedule, attended her cardiology appointments, smiled when Victor suggested movies or ordered from her favorite restaurant. And every night, while Victor slept, she slipped out of bed to check the encrypted email. The first report arrived on day 5. Selena Vale, 29, originally from Montreal, moved to New York 3 years ago, works as a consultant for import companies, at least on paper. Her declared income doesn't explain her lifestyle. Mercedes, Tribeca apartment, designer everything. Someone's funding her beyond your husband. Digging into financial records now. Elena read it twice, deleted it, slid back into bed. Beside her, Victor slept with the ease of someone who hadn't yet understood his situation. But something was bothering Elena, a thread she'd noticed and kept pulling. On the day Victor went back to his office for the first time, she moved through the penthouse methodically. The suits in his closet, organized by color and season, shoes lined beneath them like soldiers at attention. She ran her hand through jacket pockets one by one. Nothing. 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 On the 5th, a navy brioni he'd worn to a fundraiser 2 months ago, her fingers found a hotel receipt. The Riverside.
Présidentielle suite.
Charged to a credit card she didn't recognize. She photographed it and replaced it exactly. Then the dresser. Methodical. Socks and ties and cufflinks. And in the back of the sock drawer, beneath the cashmere argyles, a second phone. Untraceable. The kind that didn't exist on any plan or record. Elena's hands were steady when she turned it on. Password protected. She tried the obvious one. Victor's mother's birthday, the only person he'd ever loved with an uncomplicated wholeness. The phone unlocked immediately. She read every message in silence. They went back 6 months. All of them carved in the particular shorthand of people who believed their secrets were safe. Selena, miss you already. Victor, tonight was perfect. Selena, you're dangerous. Victor, you love it. She moved forward chronologically, reading the evolution of the thing, the early heat of it, the gradual calcification into expectation and demand. And then the most recent messages, the ones from the past week, made her breath catch. Selena, how's the devoted husband act going? Victor, she's recovering. Doctor says she needs to avoid stress. Selena, so convenient. And how long are you going to use her health as an excuse to avoid me? I don't think so. Victor, we had a deal. Selena, we had an arrangement.
Same thing.
And I kept my end. I've been very helpful with your business interests. I'd hate to become less helpful. Victor, are you threatening me? Selena, I'm reminding you of reality.
Choose wisely.
And then, buried 4 months back, the message that changed everything. Selena, the shipment cleared customs. I told you my contact at the port would come through. Victor, you're good at this. Selena, I'm good at a lot of things. You're just starting to notice. Elena sat very still on the edge of the bed. Selena wasn't just his mistress. She was inside his operation. She had leverage, connections, intelligence. She'd been threading herself through Victor's empire like a needle through cloth, so gradually, so carefully, that he hadn't noticed until the thread was through and she held both ends. Elena photographed every relevant message, turned the phone off, replaced it beneath the cashmere argyles with the precision of a surgeon closing a wound. Then she went to the living room and turned on the television, and when Victor came home an hour later, she smiled at him from the sofa and asked how his day had been.
Fine, he said.
Usual chaos. Good, Elena said, and watched him pour a scotch and check his phone 3 times in 4 minutes. The following morning, Victor set his coffee cup down and looked at Elena with something that might have been genuine remorse. I've been thinking about Italy, he said. Once you're cleared by the doctors, the Amalfi Coast. Just us. As long as you want. Elena looked at him across the kitchen island. 7 years ago, she'd wanted nothing more than this man and that coast and the future they'd promised each other over a dinner they could barely afford. She'd wanted him with the uncomplicated ferocity of someone who still believed love was sufficient armor. That woman was dead. That sounds lovely, Elena said. When I'm better. Relief flooded his face so completely that for a moment he looked young. He crossed to her and kissed her forehead. When you're better, we'll plan it together. She let him believe she meant it. That afternoon, while Victor met with his lawyers about some problem he wouldn't discuss in front of her, Elena walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop and opened the encrypted email. Barrett's second report had arrived. Selena Vale has connections to the Connie family, specifically to Aldo Connie, who runs operations on the West Side. She's been laundering money through her consulting firm for 2 years. The firm issues invoices for services never rendered, and the payments flow to offshore accounts. Your husband's businesses have paid her firm over $2 million in the past 18 months. Elena read it a second time. But here's the critical detail. She's also receiving payments from the Countess. She's playing both sides, using her relationship with your husband to access his operations, while feeding intelligence back to his competitors. She's not just his mistress. She's a plant. The coffee shop murmur continued around her. Ordinary conversations, ordinary lives. Completely unaware that a woman at the corner table was watching her entire understanding of the past 6 months rearrange itself into something far more dangerous than infidelity. Selena Vale hadn't fallen into this affair. She'd engineered it. From the charity gala where they'd first met, which Barrett confirmed Selena had specifically arranged to attend, knowing Victor would be there, every moment of those 6 months had been architecture, not passion. Strategy. Elena typed back. Can you prove it? I need documentation. Financial records. Communication between her and the Countess. I need everything. It's going to cost more. We're talking about encrypted communications and offshore financial databases. This is federal crime territory. Are you sure you want me to proceed? Elena didn't hesitate. Proceed. Whatever it costs. She closed the laptop and ordered another tea. Her mind was already moving past documentation, past evidence, into the terrain of what came next. The old Elena would have warned Victor, would have handed him the evidence and let him handle it, because protecting him was what wives did. Because love meant shielding the person you'd chosen, even when they didn't deserve it. But the woman sitting in this coffee shop understood something the old Elena never had. Victor's destruction was her opportunity. Victor's paranoia began to surface in small, telling ways. He started checking the front door twice before bed. He'd taken to lowering his voice on phone calls even when Elena was in another room. One evening she heard him through the study wall. Someone in my organization is talking to the Countess. I want to know who. Everyone is a suspect until I say otherwise. And she pressed her palm flat against the cool plaster and breathed slowly through the tightening in her chest. Not guilt. Just the physical reality of what she was doing, acknowledged, and then set aside. The 3rd week of her recovery, Elena told Victor she wanted to start going out again. Short walks. Light exercise. The doctor had recommended it. His face lit up. I'll come with you. You're busy, she said gently. I'll just go to the park. Nothing strenuous. I need to start being independent again. She watched the conflict play out behind his eyes. Relief that she was healing. Guilt that he felt relieved. Promise you'll call if you feel even slightly off, he said. I promise. She kissed his cheek. He smiled. Elena didn't go to the park. She went to a coffee shop 3 blocks from Selena Vale's Tribeca apartment and waited. Barrett's surveillance had documented Selena's routine with meticulous precision. Every Tuesday at 2:30, yoga class, 6 blocks south. She passed this coffee shop on her way. At exactly 2:28, Selena walked past the window. Elena looked at her without flinching. She was even more striking in person than in the photographs, tall and elegant, expensive workout clothes, dark hair pulled back, designer sunglasses that announced money without trying. She moved with the specific confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything they decided to want. Elena watched her disappear down the street and felt nothing but the cold clarity of assessment. This hadn't been about Selena being better than Elena. It had been about Selena being useful. And Elena was about to make her useless. 2 weeks later, Barrett's full dossier arrived at 3 a.m. in an encrypted file that took 5 minutes to download. Elena sat in the dark of Victor's study and opened it. Financial transactions showing money flowing from Conti-controlled accounts into Selena's consulting firm. Encrypted messages between Selena and Aldo Conti discussing Victor's shipping routes and warehouse locations. Photographs of Selena meeting with Conti associates in restaurants and hotel bars. A paper trail showing she deliberately positioned herself at the charity gala, seated specifically near Victor's table, with knowledge of his schedule obtained from a Conti mole inside Romano's organization. The affair had been calculated from the first breath of it. And woven through it all were the messages Elena had photographed from the burner phone, now contextualized by everything Barrett had uncovered. Every question Selena had asked about Victor's business, intelligence gathering. Every suggestion she'd made about operations, deliberate exposure of vulnerabilities. Every moment of intimacy, architecture. Elena sat back in the chair and let the understanding settle. She could take this to Victor right now. She could walk down the hall and lay every piece of it on the bed beside him and watch his face as it destroyed him. He'd handle it the way he handled all threats, with violence, resources, and the full force of his network. Selena would disappear. The Countess would retaliate or retreat. And Victor would owe Elena his empire, his life, his future. He'd be devoted in the way that guilt made men devoted, obsessively, suffocatingly, forever. And Elena would be exactly where she'd been before. Invisible, grateful, living in the shadow of a man who'd learned nothing except that he needed to be more careful.
No.
Elena closed the laptop. If Selena was a weapon pointed at Victor, Elena wouldn't disarm her. She'd redirect her. Victor left for a business trip the morning after Elena made her decision, kissing her goodbye with the distracted warmth of someone whose mind was already somewhere else. She watched his car disappear into traffic. Then she sent Barrett 2 instructions. The first, I need you to make sure the Countess know that Selena is compromised, that her cover may be at risk. Make it look like the information leaked from someone inside Victor's organization. The response came back within the hour. Once I do this, things escalate quickly. The Countess will either pull her out or accelerate their timeline. Either way, it gets messy. Are you absolutely certain? Elena typed, do it. The second instruction, I need to know when and where Victor and Selena are meeting. Their exact schedule. Already tracking it. Riverside Hotel.
Présidentielle suite.
Wednesdays and Fridays. He arrives around 7. She gets there by 7:30. Stays until midnight.
Tomorrow was Wednesday.
Elena closed the laptop and looked at the ceiling of the study for a long moment. Then she began to plan. If you're still here, you already know this isn't just a story. It's a descent into a world where love and survival speak the same language, where the most dangerous thing a woman can do is refuse to stay broken. Elena has moved past grief. She's moved past anger. She's in the cold, clear space beyond both, and that's where the real power lives. Subscribe because the people who stay for this kind of darkness understand that the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone underestimated.
Stay until the end.
It's worth it. Wednesday arrived with unseasonable warmth. Victor dressed with unusual care that morning, the extra attention to his shoes, the cologne, the 3 phone checks in 5 minutes. Elena watched him from the living room with the detached interest of someone studying a performance. Big day? She asked. Construction bid fell through on the waterfront project. He straightened his cuffs. I need to smooth things over. Probably won't be home until midnight. I understand. Elena crossed to him and straightened his tie, her fingers gentle against the silk. Business comes first. He caught her hand and pressed it to his lips. You come first. Always. The irony of those words, spoken hours before he'd drive across town to his mistress, didn't cause pain. It was simply data. I know, Elena said, and kissed his cheek. Be safe. After he left, she moved with purpose. Black pants, cashmere sweater, comfortable shoes, hair pulled back, minimal makeup, nothing memorable. The goal was to become one of 10 million faces. Barrett had provided more than information. He'd given her the hotel's security schedule, the camera blind spots, the key card for a service entrance. He'd arranged access to a room on the 14th floor, directly across the hall from the presidential suite. Elena arrived at the hotel at 6:15 and was in the room by 6:30, the door locked behind her. At 7 o'clock, She watched through the peephole as Victor emerged from the elevator and moved down the hall with the ease of someone who'd done this many times. He used his key card without hesitation. The door closed behind him. Elena counted her breaths. At 7:28, Selena arrived in a green dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. She moved like she owned the floor, like she owned everything she looked at. The door to the presidential suite opened from inside.
Closed.
Elena sat in the chair beside the door and listened to the silence of the hallway and let herself feel the thing she'd been managing for weeks. Not rage. Something older and quieter. The precise moment a marriage dies.
Not the first lie.
Not even the affair. But this, her sitting in this room, alone, in the hotel where her husband came to be someone else, while the city moved indifferently outside, and the machines in that hospital room already felt like another lifetime. This is where it ended. She stayed 3 hours. At 11:15, Barrett texted. Subject 1's driver just arrived. You should go. Elena stood, her legs stiff from stillness. She took one last look through the peephole at the presidential suite door. Then she left. She was home before Victor. Changed into pajamas. Washed her face. Curled on the sofa with a book. When she heard his key in the lock, she looked up with the mild curiosity of a woman who'd spent a quiet evening alone. You're still up. Surprise in his voice. Couldn't sleep. She studied him.
Composed, collected.
The slight redness at his collar, where lipstick had been hastily removed. How were the meetings?
Exhausting.
But productive. He poured a scotch. How was your day? Quiet. I took a walk.
Read.
Thought about things. What kind of things?
Elena smiled.
Our future. What comes next? Something flickered across Victor's face. Unease, maybe. Or the faintest echo of recognition that his wife was different in some way he couldn't quite locate. But he let it go. He always let it go. I've been thinking about that too, he said.
Italy.
Taking that trip once you're fully recovered. That sounds lovely. Elena meant neither word. They sat in companionable silence, and Elena looked at him and thought, this is what our marriage has always been. Two people in the same space, living in entirely different realities. I love you, Victor said suddenly. The words of a man trying to convince himself through repetition. Elena looked at him, saw a man desperately trying to be someone he wasn't. A man who wanted to be good but lacked the structural capacity for it. A man who thought he could have everything and pay for nothing. I know, she said. Victor finished a scotch and went to bed. Elena sat alone in the gathering dark, already moving to the next phase. The office of Margaret Bianchi occupied the top floor of a tower downtown, all glass and steel, and the aggressive minimalism of someone who'd built her career by dismantling other people's empires legally. She was 60, silver-haired, with eyes that could calculate net worth in seconds, and had seen enough to be surprised by almost nothing. Mrs. Romano. Margaret rose to shake Elena's hand, her assessment immediate and complete. I was intrigued by your call. Victor Romano is a difficult man to divorce. Because of his connections. Because of his willingness to use them. Margaret gestured to the chair across her desk. I'll be direct. If you go through with this, it will get ugly. He's not the type to let go gracefully. I don't need graceful, Elena said. I need effective. Margaret smiled. Then you've come to the right place. They spent 2 hours in that office. Elena laid out the architecture of her marriage, the prenuptial agreement Victor had insisted on, leaving her with almost nothing if she left. The way she dissolved into his life, giving up her own ambitions to become the perfect accessory to his power. The distance that had grown between them. The cardiac episode that had finally, irrevocably, revealed exactly where she stood. She didn't mention the affair yet. That was a card she'd play when the timing was right. Margaret took notes with surgical precision. When Elena finished, she set down her pen and looked at her newest client with undisguised approval. You're more prepared than 90% of the women who walk through that door. Most of them come in angry. You came in strategic. I had time to think during recovery. The prenup is our first target. Margaret leaned forward. You were 25. In love. signing documents prepared by his lawyers without independent legal counsel. We'll argue duress, overreach, unconscionability. Even if we lose the argument, the attempt will cost him time and legal fees and put him on the defensive. And in New York, equitable distribution doesn't simply defer to prenuptial agreements when circumstances warrant challenge. How long will this take? 6 months.
A year.
Depends on how hard he fights. Margaret met her eyes. He will fight, Mrs. Romano. Not because he loves you or wants to save anything. He'll fight because he can't tolerate losing, especially to someone he underestimated. Elena thought about 3 unanswered calls. The kitchen floor. The way Victor had walked past Selena in his corridor without recognizing what he was looking at. He's been underestimating me for 7 years, Elena said. Let's make sure it costs him. Margaret's smile had edges. I'll have papers ready by Friday. Victor returned from his business trip, looking like a man who'd aged a decade in transit. Lines deeper around his eyes. Jaw tight with the specific tension of someone whose world had developed fractures he couldn't locate. 3 days after his return, while he was locked in his study on yet another call, someone in my organization sold me out, and when I find out who, they will regret it. Elena sat in the living room and received Barrett's final report. She read it 3 times. Selena Vale has received instruction from the Countess to stand down and exit. The operation is being abandoned. However, she's refusing to comply. She's gone rogue, moving money, liquidating assets, setting up new accounts. She's not just planning to disappear, Mrs. Romano. She's planning to take your husband's assets with her when she goes. She used the Countess to get access and position. Now she's using that position for herself. Elena set down the phone. She almost admired it. Selena had been running 2 games simultaneously, the Connie operation and her own private scheme, using one as cover for the other. She'd let the Countess fund her proximity to Victor, while she quietly built the infrastructure to rob him blind and vanish before anyone realized what she'd actually been doing. It was ruthless. It was brilliant. And it was going to collapse spectacularly. How long do we have?
Elena tipped.
A week. Maybe 2. She's moving fast. Then so are we. Document everything she's doing. And find out where she's planning to run. She closed the laptop and looked at the ceiling. Selena is not the weapon pointed at Victor anymore. She's the weapon pointed at both of them. And Elena was going to make sure it fired in exactly the right direction. The Connie residence was listed publicly as a private investment firm in Midtown. The number Elena called connected to a man with a gravelly voice who put her on hold for 4 minutes before returning. This is Aldo Conti. The voice was cultured, measured, nothing like the Hollywood version of what a crime boss sounded like. You have 60 seconds. Selena Vale has been stealing from you, Elena said.
No preamble. No apology.
The account she set up to funnel money from my husband's operations, she's been skimming 20% and moving it into her own offshore holdings. She's accumulated over $3 million of your money, and she's planning to disappear with it within the week. Silence. You know this how? Because I've been watching her for weeks, documenting her, gathering evidence of everything she's done. Elena's voice was steady. I know about the plan to use her to infiltrate my husband's organization. I know she was supposed to feed you intelligence and position the Countess to absorb his territories. I know she's gone rogue, and I can prove all of it. A longer silence. Why would you tell me this? Your husband is the one she's stealing from. Because my husband is going to get exactly what he deserves, Elena said quietly. But so is Selena. The question is whether you want to minimize your losses, or let a woman who's already betrayed you once walk away with millions of your money and the satisfaction of having made you look foolish. The silence stretched. What do you want? A meeting. 1 hour. Somewhere public. You bring one person, I bring no one. We discuss terms. Terms. For the evidence. Everything I have on Selena, bank accounts, transaction records, travel plans, communications. Everything you need to stop her before she's gone. In exchange, you leave my husband's operations alone. Whatever you planned, you abandon it. You disappear from his life and from mine.
Conti laughed.
It sounded like gravel. You want me to give up a multi-million-dollar operation because you're handing me one rogue operative? I want you to cut your losses on an operation that's already compromised, Elena corrected. Selena has cost you time, money, and credibility.
She's stolen from you.
She's ignored your orders. She's made you look weak to every organization in the city that's been watching. I'm offering you a way to recover face, to punish the person who actually betrayed you, instead of starting a war with my husband that will cost you more than you'll gain. The silence was longest this time. Central Park. Bethesda Fountain. 2 hours. Come alone. The line went dead. Elena's hands were trembling. She set the phone down and pressed both palms flat against her thighs until they steadied. She just called a crime boss and negotiated with him directly. There was, she noted with distant clarity, no going back from this. But then again, she'd already died once on her kitchen floor. Everything since then had been borrowed time. She might as well spend it doing something with it. The fountain was nearly empty in the November cold. Elena arrived 15 minutes early and took a bench with clear sight lines in every direction. Aldo Conti arrived at exactly the agreed time. He was younger than she'd imagined, maybe 50, silver at his temples, tailored coat with the quiet expense of old money. He walked with one other man, a bodyguard built like a structural wall, who maintained a discreet 5 paces behind. Mrs. Romano. He sat beside her without being invited. You're either very brave or very stupid. Neither.
I'm practical.
Elena opened the leather portfolio in her lap and handed him a single page. This is a summary. Enough to show you I'm serious. The full dossier comes after we have an agreement. He studied it for a long moment. His face revealed nothing. This shows skimming. It doesn't prove she's running. The full documentation does. Elena kept her voice even. But you don't get that on faith. You get it on terms. They walked the path around the fountain, the bodyguard trailing at distance, and Elena made her case with the calm precision of someone who'd rehearsed it in the dark for weeks. She wasn't offering sentiment. She was offering calculation. The Connie operation was burned. Selena had compromised it beyond salvage. Starting a war with Victor would cost more than the territories were worth, and Victor, now alert to infiltration, would fight with everything he had. The math didn't work. What worked was cutting losses, recovering the stolen money, punishing the actual betrayer, and walking away with reputation intact. Connie was quiet for so long that Elena thought he'd simply gotten up and left her with the silence. Then, show me the rest. She handed him the full portfolio. He read every page. When he finished, he looked at Elena with an expression she recognized as respect, the cold, functional variety that had nothing to do with warmth. How did you get all this? I hired someone very good at finding things people want hidden. And you're giving it to me because Selena Vale destroyed my marriage while trying to destroy my husband, Elena said. Because she deserves to lose everything. And because you and I both know that sometimes the enemy of my enemy is exactly the partner I need. Connie handed the portfolio back.
Keep it.
I've seen enough. He studied her another moment. You could have taken this to federal prosecutors, brought down both Selena and your husband in one move. I could have, Elena agreed. But that would have destroyed me too. This way I get justice without prison. You recover your money and your dignity. And Selena gets exactly what she's earned. And your husband? Elena's smile was winter cold. He'll survive. He always does. But he'll spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering who betrayed him, tearing his organization apart looking for ghosts that aren't there. Sometimes the fear of an attack is more damaging than the attack itself. Conti nodded once. Sharp. Final. We have a deal. I'll handle Selena. Your husband's operations are no longer of interest to me. He rose and walked away without looking back, the bodyguard folding in beside him. Elena watched them disappear into the park's bare winter trees. Then she sat alone on the bench for a moment, letting her pulse slow, feeling the cold air move through her. She had just negotiated the end of her marriage and the beginning of something she didn't yet have a name for. But she was alive. She was standing. And for the first time in 7 years, she'd done something entirely on her own terms. The unraveling, 45:00, 48:00. Victor came home from his business trip 3 days later looking hollowed out. The confident architecture of him, the squared shoulders, the measured stride, had developed fault lines that Elena suspected no one else had yet noticed. But Elena noticed everything now. Problems, she asked mildly. Someone in my organization fed information to the Countess. His voice was controlled in the way that meant barely. I'm going to find out who. That sounds serious. She touched his arm gently. Is there anything I can do? He looked at her, and she saw the war. The impulse to tell her everything warring with the habit of protecting her with ignorance. The habit won.
No.
I'll handle it. He pulled her briefly into his arms. I just need you to be here. To be safe. You're the one thing I can't afford to lose right now. The words landed somewhere in Elena's chest like a stone in water. She held very still. I'm not going anywhere, she said. The most honest thing she'd said in weeks. That night, while Victor finally slept the exhausted sleep of a man who'd spent days running from shadows, Elena slipped out to the study and sent Margaret Bianchi 2 words. File Friday. Margaret's response was immediate. I'll have the papers ready by Thursday night. Once filed, he'll be served Friday afternoon. After that, everything moves fast. Are you prepared? Elena looked at the dark window for a long moment. More than prepared, she typed. I've been preparing for months. She cleared the browser and went back to bed. For days until everything burned. His phone buzzed at 9:45 that night while they were watching television, or while Victor watched and Elena performed watching. He checked the screen. His posture changed in ways she'd learned to read. Small, involuntary, damning. I need to go out. Something came up. At this hour? It's important. He was already moving toward the bedroom for his coat. I won't be long. Of course, Elena said. Be careful. She waited 60 seconds after the elevator closed. Then she sent a message to Barrett's team. He's going to meet her. I need to know what happens. Already in position. We'll send updates. Elena paced the penthouse. The first update came at 10:30. They're arguing. She's crying, looks genuine, not performance. He looks angry. The second, she just told him she's in danger. That people are watching her. She's asking him to leave the city with her. He's refusing. Elena's hands tightened on her phone. Selena was trying to fold Victor into her escape, trying to reframe her own theft and exposure as a shared threat they needed to flee together. It was a last desperate gambit, the kind of move you made when every other option had closed. He's leaving, Barrett sent at 11 o'clock. She tried to stop him. He pushed her away. She's standing alone in the parking lot, watching him go. Elena set down the phone. Selena had lost Victor. Not to Elena, but to his own selfishness. His empire was here. His power was here. And he would not abandon it, not even for the woman he'd risked everything to be with. That was, Elena thought, the most authentic thing she'd ever learned about her husband. He would always, ultimately, choose the empire. Victor arrived home just after midnight. He poured scotch and stood by the window without speaking. Bad meeting? Elena asked softly. Someone I trusted turned out to be someone I shouldn't have. He didn't turn around. I'm sorry. He turned then and looked at her. Really looked in a way he hadn't in a long time. Are you? I wouldn't blame you if you weren't. Why would you say that? Because I haven't been the husband you deserved. He set the glass down. Because you'd have every right to be glad when things catch up with me. It wasn't a confession, but it was the closest Victor Romano had ever come to one. I just want you to be honest with me, Elena said carefully. About where you've been, what you want, what this marriage actually is. She watched the war move through his face again, the desire to finally, genuinely tell the truth, versus the survival instinct that had carried him through 40 years of dangerous living. Protection won. I want us to work, he said. I want to be better. The answer of a coward. Elena stepped back. Then be better, Victor. Starting now. He nodded. They both knew it meant nothing. The next morning, Barrett's final message arrived. Selena Vale left her apartment at 6 a.m. with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket to Montreal. She made it as far as the airport parking garage. Connie's people were waiting. She won't be bothering anyone anymore. Elena read it 3 times. She sat with her coffee growing cold and thought about what she felt. She searched for guilt, for horror, for the clean, legible grief of someone who hadn't wanted it to come to this. What she found instead was a distant, final quiet. The sound of a chapter closing. Selena Vale had entered this story as a predator and exited it as prey, and the trap she'd walked into had been built from the same materials as the one she'd built for others. Elena deleted the message and finished her coffee. That afternoon, while Victor was at his office managing the crisis of Selena's sudden disappearance from his world and his organization, Elena took a cab downtown. Margaret Bianchi's office had a different quality in the afternoon light, something almost collegial about it. 2 women across a desk planning the end of a man's world. "The papers are ready," Margaret said. "But before you sign, I need you to hear something. He's going to know you were involved somehow. Maybe not immediately, maybe not with proof. But men like Victor, when their world falls apart, they trace it back. They find the origin. And when he finds his way to you, I know." Elena picked up the pen. "I'll be somewhere he can't reach me. You have the safe house?" "I have it." She signed her name on 43 pages with steady hands. Elena Romano for the last time. The name felt like a costume she'd worn too long. She sealed the papers in the return envelope and set it by the door for morning. Then she went to the bedroom and packed the bag she'd been quietly assembling for weeks. Medications. Documents. The photographs from their early years. She packed those, though she couldn't entirely explain why. Sentiment, maybe. Or the need to remember who she'd been before she'd learned who she was capable of becoming. That night, Victor came home and sat beside her on the sofa and said, "I love you," with the desperation of someone making an offering to a god they weren't sure still existed. "I know," Elena said. She slept better that night than she had in months. The divorce papers were filed at 9 a.m. At 8:01, the courier picked up the envelope from outside their door while Victor was still in the shower. Elena listened to the water running and thought, the last ordinary sound, the last normal morning. She made coffee, poured Victor a cup, and left it on his nightstand like she did every morning. He emerged at 7:50, already dressed, and found her in the kitchen. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." She smiled. "Thought I'd take a walk. Clear my head." He caught her hand as she passed. Held it for a moment.
Yeah.
"Yes. I know things haven't. I know I haven't." He stopped. Started again. "You matter to me. I want you to know that." The words had come 7 years too late and 6 months too completely. "I know, Victor," Elena said softly. She kissed his cheek. She walked out of the penthouse with her purse and the small bag she'd left near the service entrance. The doorman wished her a good morning. She smiled back and stepped into the city. By 9 a.m., the papers were filed. By noon, Victor Romano was served at his office. Elena turned off her phone, took a cab to Brooklyn, let herself into the safe house with the key Barrett had left, and sat down on a plain chair in a plain room and waited. At 2 p.m., she turned her phone back on. 37 missed calls. 23 text messages charting the full emotional cartography of a powerful man realizing he'd lost control of something he thought he owned. "Elena, what is this? Call me immediately. This is insane. Whatever you think, we can talk about it. You're making a huge mistake. Answer your phone. Where are you? Come home now. Don't do this. Please. You have no idea what you're doing. The people I work with. This puts you in danger. Elena, please." She read every one. Then she opened an encrypted email, typed a new address, one belonging to a federal prosecutor named Julia Ferrara who specialized in organized crime, and began to write. "You don't know me, but I have information about Victor Romano's operations. Financial records, shipping manifests, communications with the Connie family. Everything you'd need to build a case. I'll deliver it to you if you guarantee my safety and full immunity. I'm ready to meet whenever you are." She hit send. The response came in 4 minutes. "This is Julia Ferrara. I know exactly who you are, Mrs. Romano. I've been waiting for this call for 3 years.
Where and when?
The meeting with Julia Ferrara lasted 2 hours at a coffee shop in Manhattan, and by the end of it, Elena had signed an immunity agreement and handed over a flash drive containing the most comprehensive organized crime dossier the Southern District had seen in a decade. Ferrara looked at the drive like it was a gift she'd stopped believing in. Mrs. Romano, why not go straight to divorce court and let it end there? Why expose the criminal operation? Elena was quiet for a moment. Because I looked the other way for 7 years, she said finally. I lived in a penthouse built on other people's suffering, and I didn't ask questions because the life was comfortable and I was afraid of the answers. I can't undo that, but I can do this. She met Ferrara's eyes. And because Victor Romano needs to understand that there are consequences, not just in family court, in every room he thought he owned. Ferrara plugged the drive in and scrolled in silence for 3 minutes. When she looked up, something had shifted in her expression. This is going to take time to verify. 2 weeks, maybe 3. But Mrs. Romano, if this is what it looks like, we're talking racketeering, money laundering, RICO charges. Decades. I know. And you understand that when we arrest him, he'll know you're the source. I know that too. Are you prepared for what that means? Elena thought about the hospital bed, the 3 missed calls, the kitchen floor, the months of careful, silent, systematic work that had brought her to this table with this drive in this moment. I'm prepared for whatever comes next, she said. I've already survived the worst thing he ever did to me. He let me die alone on our kitchen floor. Everything after that is just logistics. Ferrara extended her hand. They shook. The indictment came 15 days later. Press conference. Federal prosecutors. Victor Romano and 17 associates charged with money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy, and continuing criminal enterprise. Elena watched it on her laptop in the Brooklyn safe house, volume low, her expression neutral. She watched Victor's corporate photograph flash across the news channels, watched footage of federal agents moving through his office building, watched the talking heads catalog the collapse of something it had taken him a lifetime to build. She felt nothing except the quiet satisfaction of a calculation that had come out exactly right. The media connected the divorce filing to the criminal charges within hours. By the next morning, Elena Romano was a story. The loyal wife who'd nearly died while her husband cheated, who'd then discovered the depths of his criminal world and done the right thing. The narrative wasn't entirely accurate. She hadn't done this out of civic virtue. She'd done it because he betrayed her and she'd wanted him to pay. But the media didn't need complexity. It needed heroes and villains. Elena was content to let them cast her accordingly. The trial began 4 months later, when spring had finally scraped winter from the city. Elena was called to testify on the 3rd day. She dressed carefully. Navy dress. Minimal jewelry. She looked exactly like what she was. A woman who had survived something and arrived on the other side of it still standing. The courthouse steps were crowded with cameras. She walked through them without hurrying. Inside, she took the stand and swore to tell the truth. The most complicated sentence she'd ever spoken, given how many versions of it she'd been living, and found Victor at the defense table. He looked terrible. Thinner. Grayer. With the particular exhaustion of someone who'd finally understood the consequences were real. When their eyes met, he mouthed 2 words. I'm sorry. Elena looked away. The prosecution took her through the architecture of her marriage with careful precision. When they reached the night of the cardiac episode, the 3 unanswered calls, the kitchen floor, the ambulance, she felt the jury's attention shift like a physical thing. Mrs. Romano, the prosecutor asked finally, when you discovered the full extent of your husband's criminal activities, why not simply divorce him quietly? Why bring this evidence to law enforcement? Elena looked at the jury. Because I realized I'd been living in a house built on other people's harm, she said. And I realized I had a choice. I could keep living in it, or I could do something about it. I chose to do something. A pause. And because Victor Romano needed to learn that some choices have consequences that money and power can't erase. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal. He tried every angle: scorned wife, unstable convalescent, evidence manipulation, fabrication. He was good. He pushed hard. Elena answered every question calmly, precisely, without losing her footing once. When she finally stepped down 3 hours later and walked toward the exit, she felt Victor's eyes on her back until the courtroom door closed behind her. She didn't look back. The verdict came on a Tuesday. Guilty on all counts. Victor Romano would spend the next 25 years in federal prison. Elena heard the news alone in the safe house, phone quiet in her hands. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. With most of Victor's assets seized by the federal government, there wasn't the war Margaret had anticipated. There was barely anything left to fight over. The prenuptial agreement was thrown out by a judge who made his feelings about convicted criminals protecting their marital assets quite clear. Elena received a settlement that was modest compared to what she might have claimed. More than enough to begin again. She signed the final papers as Elena Connie, her maiden name reclaimed. The Romano shed like a second skin she'd worn too long. Margaret walked her to the elevator afterward. "What will you do now?" "I don't know yet," Elena admitted. "I spent so long planning his destruction that I forgot to plan what came after." "Then that's your next project," Margaret said. "Figuring out who Elena Connie wants to be." 1 year later, she went to Italy. Alone. The Amalfi Coast that Victor had promised on their honeymoon and weaponized as an apology and would now never see with her. She walked its cliffside paths alone in May with the Mediterranean below her and the sky impossibly blue above, and something in her chest that might have been grief once, transmuted now into something closer to wonder. She walked through Rome and Florence and Venice. Nobody's wife. Just a woman moving through light. She came home in September. She used part of the divorce settlement to start a foundation. She called it Seconda Possibilità, Second Chance. It provided legal assistance, safe housing, and financial resources to women navigating abusive marriages, predatory prenuptial agreements, and the particular violence of being made invisible inside your own life. She hired Margaret Bianchi as a consultant. She put Barrett on retainer for the foundation's investigative needs. Within 6 months, they were helping dozens of women. Within a year, the number was in the hundreds. Elena never spoke publicly about her own story. The media had told it adequately. What she did instead was work. Quietly, precisely, with the focused intelligence she'd spent 7 years giving to a man who'd barely noticed it. On the first anniversary of the cardiac episode, she went back to St. Mary's. She found Dr. Armani finishing a shift in the emergency room. Same wire-rimmed glasses, same kind eyes, same quiet efficiency of someone who'd been saving lives for so long it had become simply what she did. "Mrs. Romano," the doctor started, then caught herself. "I'm sorry, I heard about the name change. Ms. Conti. Elena is fine." She smiled. "I came to say thank you."
Properly.
"You saved my life." Dr. Armani studied her with the practiced eye of someone who read bodies for a living. "You look remarkable. How's your heart?" "Stronger than it's ever been," Elena said. She meant it in every possible way. She left the hospital as evening fell and walked through the city, while the lights came on across Manhattan. The buildings throwing gold into a sky going from pink to indigo. The sidewalks full of ordinary people living ordinary lives, unaware that a woman was walking among them who had died on a kitchen floor and rebuilt herself from the wreckage of what that dying had taught her. Somewhere in a federal prison, Victor Romano lived in a cell barely larger than their walk-in closet. Somewhere the women she'd helped through Seconda Possibilità were building lives in apartments he would never know the addresses of. Somewhere Selena Vale's story had ended in whatever final accounting the Countess had delivered in an airport parking garage. And Elena was here, walking.
Alive.
She pulled out her phone and opened the Notes app where she kept a record of things she didn't want to forget. 1 year ago, I died on my kitchen floor. 1 year ago, my husband chose someone else. 1 year ago, I learned that the only person who could save me was me. Today, I'm alive. I'm free. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The heart they said was broken has healed. Not the way it was before. Differently. Better.
Meaning.
She closed the app. The first snow of the season began to fall, Soft, clean, indifferent to history, and Elena Connie walked into it with her head high, her breath making small clouds in the cold air, her future unwritten, and full of something she hadn't dared name for a long time. Possibility. The ghost of who she'd been faded into the city, lights behind her. She didn't look back. If this story found you, it found you for a reason. Because you know what it costs to love someone who never showed up. Because you've sat in a quiet room and decided enough. Because you understand that the most powerful thing a woman can do isn't forgive and forget. It's remember and rebuild. If Elena's story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so these stories keep reaching the people who deserve them. And tell me in the comments, what moment hit you the hardest? The kitchen floor? The hotel room across the hall? The fountain in Central Park? Because some stories aren't about falling in love. Some stories are about falling back into yourself. And that is always worth staying for.